So this is the 0840 hours GMT edition of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions of Khoodeelaar television channel, part A, timed at 0840 GMT on Saturday, 3rd of December 2022. It's being broadcast only on the internet, not on satellite, not on terrestrial, not on cable. This morning's London Fleet Street papers have got the I newspaper, weekend edition, leading on the front page, UK Brexit regrets are growing. Really? I mean, this is something that was absolutely inevitable because Brexit was created on endless lies perpetrated by the likes of the liar, depraved, congenital liar Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is the personification of Satan, evil. He has absolutely no conception about the truth, about honesty, and about transparency, about respect for the objective truth or compassion. He's a cruel, selfish, greedy, shameless individual. The nearest this weekend that anyone comes to Boris Johnson in terms of being shameless, greedy, disgracefully dishonest, and callous is, of course, Matthew Han Crook. We call him Matthew Han Crook because of his corruption. And long before his corrupt role in handing the equivalent of billions of pounds of public resources to conservative crooks, including criminals like the woman called Baroness Bra. She should be just called the woman called Bra. Now, the creepy, lying David Cameron consigned this woman called Bra into the House of Peers. Michelle Mone. Michelle Mone is shameless, greedy, and is getting away with it. There is no sign of the political murderer of the Labour Party in the UK, Keir Starmer, who was in post for 5 years as the Director of Public Prosecutions. There is no sign from that criminal that he understands that these crimes can be prosecuted, these criminals can be prosecuted. There is no sign there. And there is nobody else on the so-called front bench that is behind the liar Keir Starmer, that they realize that this is absolutely legitimate, constitutionally valid, ethically valid, morally demanded, that all these criminals that have looted billions of pounds of public money under the cover of COVID, various services that they offered, various solutions that they offered, were absolutely untrue, unfounded, not delivered, not deliverable, not real. None of the Labour Party front benches shows so far as at this date the intellectual ability, the moral ability, the ethical ability to grasp the depth of crisis, the moral bankruptcy, the depravity of the conservatives. The same I newspaper, the front page, has got Katie Bowles. Now, Katie Bowles is a conservative. She's She is one of the names on the ultra right wing lying Spectator weekly magazine and news outlet. Her piece being trailed on the front page, which is on page 8 of the I newspaper, her heading says Tories fear exodus is about to get worse. Now, if the Tories themselves are aware of that, how come the Keir Starmer is not able to say that criminals should be prosecuted? And there is a piece on page 29 of the I newspaper with a byline by Emma Barnett. Now, Emma Barnett is herself a racist, so for her to be given this spot with the heading, How do you stop people being desensitized to world's horrors? And there's a picture from the Parkland killings protest. I mean, Emma Barnett is overhyped and overpromoted, overplatformed because of her racism and because of her other prejudices. That is the answer. People like her are the reasons why people get desensitized to world's horrors. People like her are the reasons why so much horrible things happen and so many horrible things are done, perpetrated by people on the assumption that the likes of Emma Barnett, propagandists on the mainstream media will justify them, attack the victims, attack the targets. So that's the answer, Emma Barnett. And today's Daily Mail, the weekend Daily Mail, Saturday's Daily Mail, is stuffed full of these kind of things, including the proven anti-Muslim, genocide backing, personification of Satan, Mick Hume. Make the Sikh Hume is attacking people. He's attacking people for pointing out the racist Suzanne Hussey and her racism. And yesterday's Times newspaper, Friday the 2nd of December 2022, carried a letter from a known racist, genocide supporter, William Shawcross. Shawcross is the son of a former British judge, Hartley Shawcross. But William Shawcross, who pretended to be concerned about the Cambodian massacre by Pol Pot, is actually racist, colonialist. I had a raging row with this racist liar at an event held at the Institute of Contemporary Art, so called, in London, not far from the Buckingham Palace, but nothing to do with the Buckingham Palace. Shawcross is not the only one I had rows with at the Institute of Contemporary Arts. There was a Guardian name that is no longer visible on The Guardian anyway, who was nicknamed by the private eye Sweet. Was it Sweet? Martin something. I had a row with. I had a row with the criminal, sick makingly all powerful civil servant, so called, an aide and colluder and servant of the Pakistan military martial law administrator Ayub Khan, Altaf Gauhar. Now, Gauhar, like the, well, it's not quite as a midget as Brian Hayes of the LBC used to be. But Altaf Gauhar is a midget, was a midget as well. But the liar screamed at me at the Institute of Contemporary Arts when I pointed out that he had lied. Only a few months ago, to me at a separate event held in London. And that event was one of the propaganda events organized by the Saudi propaganda machine. And it was fronted by a man called Salem Azam. And this criminal, I had a conversation with Altaf Gauhar there. I went there to observe the latest events in propaganda. And this Altaf Gauhar said to me, when I say, because that particular event was about the Muslims and the media and the Western media, attacks on the Muslims and distortions of Muslims generally. That was the theme, and he was one of the kind of speakers, I think. So at the end of the kind of session or during a break, I had a short conversation with the criminal, and I said to him that did he agree with me that Muslims should have their own, I'm not saying our, because I don't identify with any of these criminals, although they're Muslims. I most certainly do not identify, never identified with this Faruqi, who has been recently, well, he died earlier this year, who was associated with the Impact magazine. There are so many liars among Muslim leaders that it would take about 10 years to list the liars. Altaf Gauhar was a liar, a criminal, a dictator supporter, a fascist regime supporter, liars. But having known all of those things, I still asked him, because the latest event was being held and he was taking part after he retired or after the Ayub Khan regime had long gone. I said what he thought about Muslims starting their own Muslim foundation, Muslim media operations. And he didn't show much keenness on the surface. And he said it wasn't viable. Now that was in conflict with all the evidence. Now this crook actually stole my idea, and he then went on with the collaboration of the Guardian of all places, the Third World Foundation, the criminal. And this crook sought and received money from secret Muslim states. And what he did with that Third World Foundation was to conceal the lies and the corruption and the criminality perpetrated by those Muslim regimes. That was the trade-off. Now, this morning, I went to a shop, one of the big retail kind of big shops in the chains. And a woman serving at the counter wore a Muslim headdress, kind of semi hijab. And the customer before me was a white man. And he paid £23 something. And as she gave him his change, she said, "Have a nice day." Now, I was the next customer and I spent just over £10. And she gave me the change and she said nothing. Now, this in the context of the Suzanne Hussey resignation and the big comments being run even today in support of Ngozi Fulani. What does that behavior show? That behavior shows that this Asian, most likely Muslim, young woman is a complete brainwashed moron. Now, she is not in the minority. Almost all the Asian women kind of show discriminatory attitude to Asian men, and they go out of their way to come across as complimentary to white men. Now, I don't need her or any other person to give me a compliment when I'm shopping or whatever. But this was a brazen insult, not to me, but collectively to the image. And where do you begin? Where do you begin to examine this mental slavery and the servitude and the perpetration, the perpetuation of the self-inflicted mental slavery? I just note this. As I was coming out of the shop, I told the so-called security guard man, who is an Asian himself, I told him the same thing. I said, she said, "Have a nice day" to the white customer before me. But she said nothing to me. Now, I would never depend on that. I would never want her to say that to me. But to say that to the white one and not to say anything to me is a mark of deliberate disrespect to me and my background, image, whatever. Now that is the reality. That is what happens more often than what Suzanne Hussey did. Suzanne Hussey did something that William Shawcross I was talking about earlier in the Times. He said that Suzanne Hussey didn't do anything racist by asking the question or commenting on the background of Ngozi Fulani. Let me see the letter so I can read the actual letter that William Shawcross has actually published in the Times. Now, all the letters on this subject on the Times on 2nd of December, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the letters have got names. Letter writers have European names. And the only one that actually criticizes Suzanne Hussey is a writer called Ian Galletley in Witney, Oxfordshire. That's the last one. 1, 2, 3, 4. The other 4, altogether 5. Second one is the racist Shawcross. And he says there was nothing racist in them, what she said to Ngozi Fulani. And then he goes on to say, I have known her, that is Suzanne Hussey, for 40 years. And she has never shown a trace of racism. Now, how would a racist, of Shawcross's contemptible description, know what a racism is? So, for the Times to publish this is grotesquely racist and stupid, because the Times must have received other letters that were objectively critical of Susan Hussey. But the Times, like the suppressed Alexander Solzhenitsyn, decided to suppress all the letters. Most of the letters they suppress for racist reasons. And the Times is a white people's letters column. I have had few letters published, but it is too boring. The more I have sent them more letters than they have published ever. And it's an insult even to even think that they would suppress letters that contain absolutely prophetic opinion and evidence that are vindicated all the time, but the Times suppresses it. Now, the grotesque criminality of racist prejudice and imperialist prejudice against Solzhenitsyn, they gloated after Alexander Solzhenitsyn died. These criminals at the Times gloated that they suppressed his letter while he was alive, and then they published his letter, or substantial part of the letter that they had suppressed while he was alive. Shawcross says, Sue Hussey, how Pali. Sue Hussey has devoted her life to one of the most important institutions in this country. Fuck off. One of the most racist institutions in the whole world, you shit. Like the Queen, she served. She has never put a foot wrong. Fuck off. I know she will be very distressed that she has upset the guest to whom she talked. The attacks on her are totally unfair. Fuck off. And there is this other one, this woman called Monica Murphy. She says that she welcomes people asking her where she was from. But these morons are completely getting it wrong. Ngozi Fulani was not upset that anyone asked her about where she was from. She was justifiably outraged, as all reasonable people would be, for Susan Hussey repeatedly asking her where she was from, even after she had said where she was from. That is the point. That is where Susan Hussey came across as being completely racist, intentionally racist, and absolutely unacceptable. Now, today, Saturday, the 3rd of December 2022, there's a new line there floating in one of the outlets. What are they saying? They're saying the Susan Hussey must have been deaf. That's why she couldn't hear what Ngozi Fulani was saying. So she had to repeat the question. Fuck off. Did she have to repeat, where are you really from? That is nothing to do with deafness. That is to do with defying clear audibility. And going on to something else, attacking Fulani's integrity, Fulani's independence, autonomy. So these papers, so-called, which I subsidize strictly for evidential purposes, they're not helping the cause of spreading the truth, upholding the truth at all. Now, Matthew, the crook, hand crook, is getting a lot of money from the Daily Mail crooks by allegedly publishing the diaries of the COVID time when he was in post of the UK Health Secretary. The point is that that is not for him to write about as his creation. The information that he is using there belongs to the public, and the Daily Mail should be prosecuted for colluding with the liar, and the Hancock should be kind of made to return the money to the public, whatever money the Daily Mail is giving him. That belongs to the public. That information, all the information that he had while in post as the Secretary of State at the expense of the National Health Service, all the information was made available to him, was accessible to him, was accessed by him purely because he was holding a public post. And the public post was there to serve the public, not for him to benefit subsequently by claiming it to be his property. It is not his property. Now, there are so many other things that are wrong with the newspapers. Let's see what Katie Bowles is saying about stupid Javid. But the stupid Javid is the name that I created for him as soon as he became a cabinet minister. That was long before he became a cabinet minister for the Home Office, in which capacity he abused his capacity and took Shamima Begum's British by birth citizenship. I think I condemned Javid as stupid Javid because the serial stupidity he was indulging in quite fast. So the I is saying that in coming months, Rishi Sunak will be facing stronger opposition criticisms from conservatives rather than from Labour, which is absolutely true. Okay, so this is Katie Bowles. Now, the piece about Javid is not by Katie Bowles, it's by Jane Merrick, who is described as policy editor. And she says in her last paragraph on stupid Javid, announcing his departure on Twitter, Javid said, after much reflection, I have decided that I will not be standing again at the next general election. Serving as the Member of Parliament for Brooks Grove remains an incredible privilege, and I'll continue to support the government. Of course, he will. So, what is new? He is a complete and absolute liar. Okay, so let's see what Katie Ball says. Katie Ball says Sajid Javid's announcement yesterday that he will not stand at the next election has been heralded in certain quarters as proof that the conservatives are fast coming round to the view that they are doomed to opposition. The 12th Tory MP to say they will step down in advance of the party HQ's self imposed deadline of 5th of December to state their intentions. Javid is the most high profile yet. More are likely to follow. When it comes to reasons not to stand, again, there are plenty to point to. While Sunak's personal approval ratings are above those of his party, he has so far offered the Tories little in terms of a poll bounce. The party lags around 20 points behind Labour, with Starmer's party comfortably holding the city of Chester in Thursday's by-election. While that result didn't come as a great surprise to either party, the size of Labour's increased majority has acted as a stark reminder to Tory MPs of the challenge ahead. Yesterday, several wrote in their MP WhatsApp group to express sadness at the scale of the opposition victory. Were an election to be held this week, Britain predicts that Labour would storm home with a whopping majority of 257, while the Tories would fall to a mere 101 seats. Yet there is still a danger of reading too much into an individual decision. Of all the current MPs heading for the door, Jabi's departure is viewed within the parliamentary party, as one of the least surprising. It is not that the Conservative MPs are happy to see the back of him. Many think he has contributed considerably to the party's time in government. Instead, it's that he has had a decent run. Sajid was always likely to stand down, says one senior Tory. He was never going have as big as a job again. Given Javid has always served as Chancellor, Home Secretary, and Health Secretary, there were only a few new government opportunities left for him. One of which was the top job. After resigning from Boris Johnson's government over the Chris Pancha scandal and thereby preempting the string of resignations that forced Johnson from number 10 Downing Street, Javid made his third attempt to win the Tory leadership, but rather than find success, he was knocked out in the early stages. MPs who had supported him in his previous efforts privately concluded that his time had passed. There are only so many times you can go for it. Well, it seems that there is no limit to the number of times that the perennial liar, the congenital liar Boris Johnson will be allowed to try. I'm not going to read any more of the Katie Bowles piece because, as I said at the beginning, she is a Tory. And she is not writing about society, about the country, and about the corruption, any of that. She's talking about the gossip. And this is all that she writes. She's a Tory gossip. So, gossips like her do not contribute to the enlightenment of the debate about society, about democracy, about accountability, about anything. And yet she is permanent fixture. Katie Bowles is one of the 50 or so-called mainstream kind of participants, mainstream media participants in the, she is a print journalist essentially, but she appears on the broadcasting platforms as often as she writes print pieces. So Katie Bowles is one of the 50 or so people that are given automatic platforms by the mainstream other parts of the media apart from the Spectator. And she doesn't contribute anything. And it applies to the others, the other 49 or so that I'm able to count in terms of the frequency of their appearances. And they are all racists. They're all white and they're all racists. They don't have to be racist because they're white, but because they're racist. That is why their racism is worth pointing out. She's not talking about Javid as an Asian or Javid as a Muslim. Why? Because Javid himself has volunteered the information that he is not really a Muslim. He renounced Islam in fact. So we shall be coming to an end of this edition and we shall be talking about Shamima Begum and her bogus husband, the rapist who raped her, being given a platform in the Daily Mail yesterday. We shall be talking in the next edition about that. This is how long? 39 minutes. Just about 40 minutes.